This is the day. This is the day, our psalm says. The third day, the first day of the week. This is the day of the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Christ, our hope, is risen. Let us rejoice and be glad. This day really has not all that much to do with bunnies and candy and colored eggs, but has everything to do with the new life that God brings us through Jesus Christ. For those at Jesus' time, Peter, in our first reading, tries to explain it in this way: that God had bestowed his Spirit and power upon a man, Jesus of Nazareth, who many of them had seen going about doing many good works. Jesus had even done miraculous things, healing the ill and freeing people from being oppressed by evil. It was very clear that God was with him. But what many didn't yet understand was that Jesus was more than a man. Jesus himself claimed to be God. For example, even using God's own name, I am. And for this seemingly blasphemous claim to divinity, Jesus was put to death on the cross. Now, just because Jesus died a horrible death doesn't prove that he's God. If simply dying made somebody God, well, then any of us could be God, because all of us will eventually die. Anybody, I suppose, could even do what Jesus did. Jesus claimed that he was dying for us, but even that doesn't prove that he's God. Because any of us could say that we choose to die out of love for somebody else. And perhaps even for a good person, some of us might have the courage to die. But we see that Jesus must be different, because he chose to die for those who were not good, for those who were the very ones who took his life. And that's another clue, is that Jesus is a man like no other. Then we come to the third day, this day, the first day of the week. Very early in the morning, first the women, then the apostles, they came to the tomb, and they found it empty. Again, an empty tomb is not direct proof of the resurrection. Many people have tried to explain away the absence of Christ's body through other means. But the empty tomb and the burial cloths left behind is an essential sign to us. It's the first step toward recognizing the fact of the resurrection and who Jesus is. And the key really is what follows on the rest of Easter Day. Because then the risen Lord begins to appear. In the daily readings we find throughout the Easter octave of this week, through the second and third Sundays of the Easter season, we hear proclaimed the multiple accounts of Jesus' appearances. Because even his followers on Friday, this past week, to them it was undeniable that Jesus had died. And now, this day, it was undeniable that he was alive. It fulfills all of what was said of Jesus through the prophets. It proves that he is God, because it's unheard of that anybody should rise from the dead. The skeptics in our world today may say to us that Jesus could not have risen from the dead. Don't you know that it's impossible for someone to rise from the dead? And as Christians, we should say, yes, of course we know that. Yes, it is impossible. That's why it was such a big deal when Jesus rose from the dead. That he appears afterwards, that's what proves to us that he's God, that he's alive, and proves his love for us. And for us as Christians, it's not just that we trust what other people have said. It's not just that we trust those first apostles. what they said about the risen Lord? No, it's because we ourselves can encounter Jesus still appearing to us today. He speaks to us through prayer, through the sacred scriptures, in the providential guidance of the events of our lives, foremost through the sacraments, and in particular, his real presence with us here in the Blessed Sacrament. Today's gospel concludes that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Why? Why did he have to go through all this? Why did Jesus bother going through all of the suffering of the cross, even to death? What necessitated the resurrection? Well, today's Easter sequence gives us the answer. Christ the Lamb has saved the sheep. Christ the Just One paid the price, reconciling sinners to the Father. See, Jesus died and rose again because our lives depend on it. God created each of us in his image, made us for relationship with him and each other. But unfortunately, through the envy of the devil, sin, suffering, and death came to us, distorting who we are and disordering many of our thoughts and desires and actions. But wonder of wonders, God himself has come to defeat the enemy. He's come to right the wrong, to heal the wound and restore us and rescue us to the freedom of new life through the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So what do? St. Paul in our second reading explains what our response should be. Seek what is above. Seek what is above. Each of us are invited to respond to our Lord's invitation, to be joined to Christ's body, the church, to receive back our identity as his beloved sons and daughters, to live no longer for ourselves, but to live for the one who died and rose for you. God has sought you and I out. He came down from heaven even into the depths of our suffering and our own death. So now, seek him out. He'll appear to you. He will reveal his presence to you if you ask. We also have a mission. As Peter explains in the first reading, that Jesus commissioned us to preach to the people, to testify that he is the one appointed by God, and that everyone who believes in him will receive forgiveness of sins through his name. So that means that you and I have been called to go out, to go to our families, to go into our communities, to testify to Jesus Christ, to invite those around us who may have not experienced God working in their life, to come and to meet him, meet the God who died and rose for them. When will you and I respond to this? This is the day.